Well, watching all of this play out at the moment as well as Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, Professor of Political Studies and International Relations at the University of the Western Cape. Professor Mngomezulu, good afternoon to you, sir, and thank you for your time. How do you assess the balance of power? We have 83, I think it must be 83 members of the ANC's NEC now in a hall in Nasrec. We have this sort of turmoil in our politics. Where do you think the balance of power rests?
Oh, thank you very much, Stephen, for having me, and good afternoon to your viewers. No, this Phala matter is like a hot potato now. You hold it on one hand, then it bends it, you move it to the other, it still bends it, but you can't throw it on the floor, unfortunately. So it's a very critical situation. In terms of the balance of forces, there are people who hold the view that they will defend the president at all costs. It doesn't really matter what happens to the organization in 2024, they are prepared to defend the president. Then there are those who are saying that let us rather deal with the issue now and then avoid embarrassment in 2024. So those who hold that view then will argue and say that maybe the president should just save everybody and resign. So you have those two divergent point of views. But I think that in terms of the numbers will increase on the side of those who are supporting the president, not necessarily because they believe what he did was right or what he allegedly did was right, but because they are also worried about their own position. So in that case, then, you may see the president emerging victorious, but the main question for me is at what cost? Because the president can win this particular round, that is in terms of tomorrow's discussions in Parliament, and then, of course, might win the presidency of the ANC on the 16th to 20th of December. But the main question is, what then does all of this mean for the ANC in 2024 national government election?
So, I think that must be uppermost in the minds of people, but there's also the timing of this. The ANC's National Conference, which starts next Friday. If the NEC removes Ramaphosa, if the NEC accepts his resignation or allows him to resign, then you have to have an acting president for 10 days or so until the conference actually elects a new president, presumably the current Deputy President David Mabuza. And only then would you have a new leader. So you would have essentially, over the course of, let's call it 3 weeks, 3 presidents. Is that really a viable option, or would they want to wait until the conference to avoid that?
No, they should have avoided this thing long time ago, Stephen. When this Phala matter started, they were supposed to have dispensed of it at that particular point. To wait until now is in fact a lack of leadership prowess, I would say. Because you knew that there was going to be an election this year, and you knew the dates when the election was going to take place, and you knew that if you delay the Phala matter, it will come back to haunt you. So why not deal with the matter at the time when it arrived, so that at least by now we would have put this thing behind us, and then the focus would have been on the elective conference. So I think the ANC got itself into this trouble, and it has to get itself out of it. But unfortunately, for me, the way they are doing it is not the right one, because people are rallying behind the president for wrong reasons. They are not saying that the president did something right, but they are saying that let us rally behind the president to avoid a chaotic situation like the one we've just outlined. So the question then is, when did they think about that possibility? Because had they thought about it earlier, then they would have had all the reasons to dispense of this matter earlier than later, because now it's causing more confusion. And in the process, not just the ANC is suffering, but the nation is also going to pay the brunt. And it's not something palatable, honestly.
Well, we see these divisions in the ANC. We should be discussing how best to create jobs for young people, to get them into work. We should be discussing how to stop gender-based violence. We should be discussing our economy. Once again, the entire nation, again, is talking about what may be a moment where the ANC removes an elected leader.
Absolutely, Stephen. That's why I'm saying that while this appears to be an ANC matter, it unwittingly becomes a national issue. Because of the reasons you've just pointed out, that people are waiting for services. They want a stable country. They want a stable economy. They want to deal with the load shedding issue, which is becoming a menace to society. They want to deal with unemployment and the whole list of other things. But now all of this has been shelved, so the focus then becomes what is going to happen tomorrow. So basically, everything is now being put aside so that at least the ANC can focus on how to deal with the Phala matter, which I think is unfair to the nation. Of course, it will be fair to the president, because if he emerges victorious, he would have won this round. But then the nation is going to suffer in the process. I don't think that what our politicians are doing is good for the country. I don't think so. Not just because it is the ANC, but any other political party for that matter. I don't think it is good the way they are doing it.
I suppose the other way to look at it, Professor, I mean, maybe this is counterintuitive, or maybe I'm just being contrary and difficult, but it also doesn't show, to an extent, a weakness of the opposition parties. No one is coming through to take over from the ANC, and that's kind of what creates the situation. I mean, I would argue, or try to argue, that the ANC would be a lot more disciplined if it had been felt threatened by an opposition party 10 years ago.
No, I'm 100% with you, Stephen. You know, I've made this point several times in the past, saying that the reason why there is complacency in the ANC is because the opposition has lost direction and they failed to capitalize on the mistakes that the ANC has made. We should be learning lessons from other countries across the continent. If you look at how KANU, that is the Kenya National Union in Kenya, lost power, it was because of complacency. And then you look at the PDP in Nigeria, they lost credence because of complacency. The list goes on. So, but now we would have expected that, given the fact that we joined the democratic fray later, then we might have learned from other brothers from across the continent. But we have not. So this complacency in the ANC ordinarily is supposed to have taught the ANC a lesson. But the advantage for the ANC, one, it is a national organization. Unlike other organizations that are strong in one or two provinces, the ANC is all over. So it may lose 5 people in this province and then gain 15 in another. If you look at the DAs, the official opposition, it has failed to capitalize on this matter. For example, they become partisan in the manner in which they do their job as the opposition. Look at the manner in which they were dealing with the former president, Jacob Zuma. They were hostile to him. And then look at the manner in which they are dealing with the current president. They are too soft to the extent that they are even prepared to rally forces with him to go to the Constitutional Court against the public protector. So that is the kind of situation we find ourselves in. I'm talking about the DA because it is the official opposition. Then you take the EFF. The EFF is one party that has been growing in leaps and bounds, but it is not there yet. So it's a party for the future. I've made this statement before. So the EFF is an upcoming party, and it has prospects to do better than the DA, in fact, if it continues in this pace. Then with the Freedom Front Plus, I cannot talk much about it because it is only confined to a particular constituency. The IFP could have been a good role player, but unfortunately, it also has strong points or strengths in KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, and only very few members in other provinces. So for those reasons, then the 3 parties that are the bigger parties other than the ANC cannot capitalize on this issue. They fail to capitalize on this issue, and therefore this leads to complacency in the ANC, and it doesn't help the country. You need a strong opposition so that in the event that the ruling party or the governing party misbehaves or does things wrongly, then the opposition party can capitalize on that. But at the moment, you don't have that. That's why then I say I fully agree with your analysis.
Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, thank you, Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of the Western Cape. Well,